Let's see. Oh, my hair looks good. Okay. Okay. All right. All right. So we're running a little late, so let's just get things started. Welcome to the show. Here's my intro.
Got it. Did we rest? Stop interrupting.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Wednesday, April 25th. Today we'll be interviewing Nodozz. So let's get to it. And bada bing. And ta-da! It's Nodozz, aka Chris. Those of you who don't know Nodozz, why don't you introduce yourself to everybody? Oh, wait.
To play a rogue for a long time. I was a rogue main in Blood Legion from the majority of my membership. I actually just recently switched for Dragon Soul to Holy Paladin. They can't hear me. You suck.
I fixed it. Don't worry. Halfway through.
Oh god.
Everything's
hey,
okay.
Hey, I'm Nodozz. Play Holy Paladin. Been in the guild 3 years now. Yeah, that was basically the beginning of what you miss.
Yeah. So, you've been in the guild for 3 years.
Yep.
A lot of people know you through the stream and also through the movie. Take us back to let's just start in the beginning. Tell us about when you joined the guild, sort of how you heard about the guild, and what made you want to come here.
Yeah, well, I was in a guild called Ascent at the time, so it was pretty decently ranked guild, so obviously you're always aware of who you're chasing, who you're trying to be like, and who your competition is, so I was always aware of Blood Legion. And I play a rogue since 2006, so obviously Fury, I had known of him for many, many years through World First Warglaves. I guess that was my first exposure to Blood Legion. I was a pretty big noob back in Black Temple time. But yeah, I was in Ascent with a bunch of people I'd been with for about 2 years, and then Yogg Zero and such was kind of like killing that guild. And I decided that it was time to move on to a better place, which is something I haven't really done. I've only really been in 2 guilds in the last 5 years. But yeah, it was a hard decision because I was losing a lot of friends that I was very really close with. But you know, check out progress. Blood Legion had a rogue opening, and I decided that it was a good opportunity that I wouldn't want to pass up. You never know when there's going to be openings for your class, and when there is, it's a smart decision to seize the opportunity.
Right.
I mean, even if it wasn't going to work out, like putting in an application is always a good idea, even if they don't want your class or anything. But yeah, I just got lucky. They needed rogues, and it worked out.
Well, I guess refresh my memory. Did you join the guild while we were still dealing with Yogg Zero, or had it already been nerfed at that time?
No, I was there for a couple weeks before the final nerf and like rushed in there to kill it. So I was in there for a couple of the weeks where we were kind of like not going very hard at it because we thought it was unkillable. Like that was the first time I'd really like heard unkillable. Yeah, where we had decided that we weren't gonna like kill ourselves trying to kill the fight, and I was playing the guild for about 2 weeks at that point, and then the nerfs came out, and we killed it. Like that day, we were racing Team Ice to go in there and get server first,
Now I've got to
and US
know,
first.
how did it
US first, yeah.
feel like? Obviously, if you mentioned Yogg Zero killed Adept or hurt them, we sort of went through the same type of deal where we had, I believe, 15 people quit during that time.
Mhm.
It was a mix of hardcore and people who didn't want to push it that hard. How did it? Did you have any reservations, sort of, when you joined the guild? All of a sudden, you see we're literally in the same position you guys were, where we're on Yogg Zero and we're just like, people are doubting themselves or they don't want to push that hard. How did that? How did you sort of cope with that? Did you sort of question if you made the right decision? You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. Because I mean, one of the reasons why I did leave a sentence is people didn't want to push hard, and in my initial talks with the officers who were, leading up recruitment back in those days with Blood Legion, they had demonstrated, or they had seemed to me like people who were pushing like for hardcore and not wanting to give up on fights like that. It seemed difficult to kill in their current state. Then I got there, and there was definitely a lot of turnover happening. Like right as I got in, a lot of the PvPers were on their way out, are like transitioning from a full-time raider role to a I'm here if you need me type of role. Like they didn't want to push hard content at all anymore. They just wanted to be there for kills and stuff like that. It was kind of weird. I was just kind of like rolling with it because they had actually had an out. We knew that there was nerfs coming out eventually. And I only like 2 guilds in the world that killed it. One guild in the US got it like the night before the nerfs. So I mean, there wasn't really anywhere better to be. And Blood Legion had been a top guild for so long, so I was happy to be there. So my excitement to be there kind of outweighed my kind of reservations about being in a guild that's giving up on a fight, and I just got here. So that's good. But it wasn't a great first couple weeks because there was a lot of drama happening behind the scenes, and people weren't showing up, and I was kind of like, what's going on? But it worked out. I'm glad I powered through it and just focused on my own stuff, and didn't let that affect my attitude during my trial period.
Yeah, I remember you were. I think it was you and Juju's at the time. You guys seemed pretty quiet. I remember vaguely during your trial, and then after the trial, I remember Juju's really opened up. Uh, but yeah, so once Yogg Zero was down, sort of all that was behind us. Um, you you had left your guild obviously because of Yogg Zero. It brought you to BL, and BL had, like, it was almost essentially a fresh guild, and within, I believe, during the next tier Trial of Champions, a lot of the Adept guys came over. How many of the Adept guys actually came over? Do you remember?
Okay, I was an Ascent.
Oh, Ascent. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know why I said that. I'm sorry.
Well, because
No.
I did raid in
No.
Adept for a period of time.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh wow. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was an Ascent,
Right.
Horde
Right.
guild
Brain
on
fart.
Thrall. Yep. And yeah, actually, as soon as I came over, as I said, I was really close to a lot of those guys, and actually, in particular, the GM and raid leader. So I felt kind of bad leaving, like way back when I made that decision. Finally, he was the first person I told, and I didn't like hide it or anything. I just told him, and he kind of understood. But anyway, I remained close with them, and as they actually transferred to a different realm, Death Rock, I believe, and started a Gong Show, that guild. And when I could tell that wasn't really going to be what he was wanting, I mean, he always wanted to be in a top-end guild, and that was more important to him than leading a top-end guild. So I remained pretty consistent with trying to recruit the better players that I had left behind in Ascent. And yeah, Juju's, Chevy, Justin, Dexter. Those 4, I believe, all 4 of those came. I don't think there's any more. Yeah, Juju's, Rodsage, Dexter, and Chevy. Chevy, I mean, that wasn't really one of my picks, but he came along and everyone loved him. So
How
it kind
could
of
you
worked
not
out,
love
I guess.
Chevy, man?
No, I mean, I like him. I never thought he was a great player, but he's great to have around. If things aren't going very well, if people are getting all stressed out, he's always there to make everyone feel better. And it was always fun raiding with him. not the best player in the world, but you know, he
All
made
right,
up for it.
well, let's go into Trial of Champions. So this is the first tier you're experiencing with the guild.
Yeah.
Tell us about what your take on that instance was in that time.
Well, I mean, it was exciting. I was on. It was kind of weird, you know, because you on PTR. That was my first PTR time with Blood Legion, and then you see like Ascent, and they're on PTR, and they all see me. So that kind of felt weird because I'd been at Ascent for about 2 years, and it kind of like just left them because they weren't, you know, they weren't going anywhere promising. But I mean, it was great because you know PTR we pushed it pretty hard, and I felt pretty confident going into the tier that we were ready to, you know, to impress some people and turn some heads with our performance. And we did. I mean, I thought it was an okay tier. The last fight was a little bit screwy with the ads and everything that happened with tapped and stuns and interrupts.
Oh man.
I mean, but I don't know. Like I was still pretty new, so I mean, I got pretty vocal there near the end. I guess I started getting more comfortable with my role, and I was coordinating the ad interrupts with the rogues, and you know, I was starting to get like really passionate about the guild and wanting them to do well at that point. You know, that's just my first 6 months in the guild still, but yeah, I remember like TOC, like the end of TOC being like really when I started talking more and being more vocal and stuff like that.
Yeah, one thing specifically that comes to my mind about interrupts was you never missed your interrupts, like ever. And I remember at the time you were near the Dallas data center. Is that what it was? And you had like a 26 ping.
Yeah, no, I was single digits, like, and yeah,
Oh,
Illidan
really?
used to be
Wow.
Illidan used to be hosted in the Dallas data center, which was really really convenient for me. I live in Fort Worth, it's 20 minutes away, and there's high speed lines going back and forth in those cities. So it was really nice. I had 8 was my ping to the Dallas data center. So things like interrupts and just globals in general and getting through those were something that it worked out really well with where I was located. Um, I mean, even still before I was on a server that fed right into the Dallas data center, you know, I always prided myself on being a capable interrupter. You know, the big thing about interrupts is just focus. If you lose focus for any, you know, just a second even, that's enough to miss your interrupt. So just focusing on your task, not paying too much attention to what's going on with the raid and whatever other people's jobs are doing. I'm just focusing on my job, my responsibility, and getting it done. And just focus. But yeah, the 8 ping to the Dallas data center, that definitely did not hurt ever.
I don't even know what that would be like. I think one time I played a BlizzCon or something, and the ping was, well, there was no ping because the servers were right there.
Right.
But so sort of joining the guild during TOC after Old War, sort of felt like a breath of fresh air for a lot of us, especially since there was a lot of drama in Old War and there was a lot of tough fights in there. And TOC almost felt like just a break, just something to keep us busy till Ice Crown. Then Ice Crown was really where they had a lot of tough fights. They had a gated system, obviously, and also limited attempts. What did you think about that? And what was your take on all that?
Well, I mean, there's definitely varying opinions on how people felt about the gated system, and then furthermore the limited attempts. Um, coming from a hardcore perspective, it's kind of refreshing every once in a while, I guess, to have limited attempts because, I mean, you're burning yourself out. You know, 13-hour raids during progression nowadays, but back then we were still doing long raids, so having like limited attempts was nice because you know, you didn't have to raid that much, but I don't know, the way that it is now without gated attempts, are really the people who want it the most can really go out there and get it. I mean, limited attempts was alright. I felt like we threw away a lot of attempts early on. Our strategy was sound, but we just made some poor play mistakes. You know, defile and stuff of that nature. But I mean, and that's heartbreaking. Like that's where it's like really. I mean, when you have a limited opportunity to kill something, and you know, 50 attempts was what it got up to. But when you have a limited number, I forgot what was the starting number out. Like when you first got there, it was like 25 or something.
Yeah, because it was
It went up.
15. It was 15 for Putre side,
Yeah.
and then it went up by 5 every week, and those attempts actually shared, which was crazy. So you basically had to, if you didn't one
Yeah.
shot Putricide, Syndragosa, and Blood Queen, you
Right.
would walk into Lich King, um, basically with lost attempts because of that.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember when we were on SAF, we wanted to get to Putricide and work on that. But I think SAF is where we dropped the ball more than anything in Ice Crown. I remember that last attempt on that, I was probably, I think, attempt number 14 of the week, I think. And we still hadn't done Putricide. Um, and then I made a mistake, which was, uncharacteristic, and I got really upset at myself. And I think that was like one of the handful of times where I just like I've lost everything, like lost control, and just started like screaming at Mumble for no reason.
I
Like,
specifically remember that because it felt like you were a guy with like a knife telling people to back off, like back off. I know what happened. Back off. Like
yeah, yeah, I
I
think that's
remember
what it
trying to
was.
calm you down.
I was pissed. I was so mad at myself, and then like, it was a mistake that I had never made, and it was just a really, really dumb mistake, and I lost focus for a couple seconds, and I frost tombed the raid on our last attempt of limited attempt
Was it
killing
the
of
last
bosses.
one? I
I
thought.
think it was. I don't. Maybe I think maybe that was the second to last one. I don't know. I know Abs like taunted the thing and it breathed the
Yeah.
raid.
Yeah, that one
So
was funny
Abs
too.
taunted Saf and it breathed on the raid and killed everybody. That was pretty good too. I don't know. I just think like tensions are a lot higher when you have that limited attempt
Yeah.
system. I don't think it gets that tense. I mean, when you know this is your last chance to kill a boss for the week, that's pretty crazy. Like the adrenaline that's coursing through your veins at that point in time is pretty it's pretty intense, and that's a good feeling. That's fun whenever you actually do kill it in that type of situation.
Hmm.
Um, but then, like I said, the not having limited attempts really, um, the people who want it the most, they can show they want it the most by putting in quality time on it, and really going out there and showing to the world that they want to be the best and they're willing to put in the time to do that.
One of the things with limited attempts I remember we tried a couple times was we were trying to practice stacking the directions of the Valks in normal mode. But I remember people, it was hard to make people focus during the normal pulls. What do you remember from trying to do that? Because obviously we're trying to make the most of the limited attempts.
Yeah, and what I was saying is like we would go to Lich King and we would do several fights on normal so that we weren't exhausting heroic attempts. And that was very something that was always frustrating because I felt like people, when we put it on normal, people weren't focusing, people weren't trying. We're trying to make sure our strategy is all everyone's on the same page and we're all gonna like do this seamlessly and execute on normal so that we can just put it on heroic and very little changes happen. We just do it again. And when people know that you're not gonna kill it, like when you're just like practicing going through the motions essentially, people's hearts aren't in it and they're just not giving you the focus that the raid should require. And yeah, I felt like we accomplished sadly very little doing those normal mode attempts. And we would spend a couple hours a night like making sure that everyone was on the same page before we did use a attempt of our limited attempts. And it's just I don't know, it's just frustrating to waste that type of time during a progression setting with people not focusing. And I think that's something that the guild has really improved on throughout the years. Uh, Really a more focused level of in the progression mindset, that every minute counts. And I don't know, I think the leadership becoming more strict in that regard is something that has definitely helped as well. Because you're a Care Bear, Eric.
I was a
You
Care Bear.
Yeah, I mean you wanted to be friends with everybody, so you don't want to like lay the whip. You gotta lay the whip, dude. I don't know.
Oh my god! Yeah, like is that something? That's something Rick says all the time now, huh? Lay the
I don't,
whip down or
I
something.
don't know. It's just like I mean, when people aren't focusing and people are just dicking around, you kind of just need to like lay into them a couple times and assert yourself in a more strict leadership style, I believe.
I think a lot of that comes from the people who are there, because uh, I mean, if I was to sort of evaluate where the guild is at now, there are two major catalysts. It's basically the two exoduses that occurred. One being during Yogg Zero, where all the PvPers sort of disappeared. Those guys didn't want to put in the time. They just wanted free gear almost for PvP, and something like Yogg Zero, where it doesn't give them PvP. Um, that doesn't give them like PvP rewards. It just gives them mounts and achievements. They weren't really interested in. Then the second Exodus came at the end of Tier 11, where a lot of the old minds sort of drifted away from either bans or just didn't want to play the game anymore. Also, with the during that time, that was when Rig was sort of brought aboard. Why don't we talk about that transition where Lich King, we finished that up, and we're going into Cataclysm,
Right.
and all of a sudden this Death Knight tank appears, and people start asking why we were recruiting this guy when we already have tanks. What was your initial take on the guy?
I mean, I was pretty excited from the very beginning. At that time, I think that we all had thought that Josh Regen didn't want to be a tank anymore, and I know he changed his mind in the very near future after that. But I was really excited throughout the entirety of his trial. I was very much pro Rignaros. I thought he brought in a leadership style that we were lacking in times. I really felt like he would be a driving force in us going forward and pushing harder and becoming a more of a hardcore, even more hardcore of a guild. And I remember being like really fiercely advocating his existence in the guild. People were thinking that once Josh didn't had made it known that he wanted to be a tank full time, I made it known that I wasn't supportive of that decision. I thought that Ringrose would be a more of an asset tanking to the guild than Josh DPSing. And I was right, clearly.
Clearly.
I don't know. There's a lot of high tension there. I mean, you know when someone like Rignaros is coming in, like ultra class A personality, that there's going to be some people who are kind of put off by it. He wanted to lead since day one coming in the guild. He was ready to step up and do it. And I mean, at that time, you hadn't really said that you wanted to be like moving out anytime soon. We didn't really know that at that point, at that particular moment. But just having a tank who was more vocal and more of a leader, I think you really want that as a tank. Abs is a great tank, but I don't think he's really got the like general like type of personality where he can like direct the troops and really just evoke a command presence in the raid.
Yeah, definitely. It was a little weird with Rick coming in. At the time, Josh/Regen was on the fence about whether he even wanted to play the game at that point. And I remember when Rig basically approached me, or somebody told me he wanted to talk to me. And just from my first experience speaking with him, I knew this was sort of like the answer to the issue. So I was pretty happy about that. So Ice Crown finished, and actually Ice Crown is where you started playing a million Paladin ults. Tell us about what spawned that. What made you even pick the Paladin in the first place?
I don't know. Oh no, I do know. I had inherited a couple of accounts. The friends who used to play and no longer played post Battle.net era. So I was able to merge those accounts onto my Battle.net and then transfer the characters to my account. So I had inherited a Paladin. I hadn't put any thought into it as to what class I wanted to have as an alt, other than the fact that I really hate leveling. So I didn't want to level.
Right.
And there was already this max level Paladin like already there. So that's just what I went with. And actually, I remember my first raid ever. I had no idea what I was doing. I hadn't put any research into it. I went in and got carried in TOC. And I was like, this is so much fun. Like just doing stupid shit like bopping people, like melee. I didn't know what I was doing. It was I don't know, it was pretty silly and like I enjoyed it. Like it was so new and like refreshing. I had been a rogue and only rogue with zero alts for 4 or 5 years, and like to play this like healing class, like this paladin, it just like it was like new life, like was breathed into me and my passion for the game and the fun that I was having. And then I was just like instantly addicted. And then as soon as progression happened, we were pretty good on the alt raid still, and I was actually able to contribute. I actually started. That was the first time I did progression on the paladin, was during Lich King.
Hmm.
We had some. I don't know if Bob or Grunz were missing or whatnot, but that was the first time I stepped into the main raid on my paladin, and
Right.
it was just. I mean, paladins were really strong then. Beacon had 100% transference back then, so everything you healed is 100% transference of your heals to your beacon target. So it was huge for tank healing on Lich King. Um, the class was very, very powerful, and then we really started. I mean, we had that spreadsheet. I don't know if you have it still, but
It's
I mean,
still around.
we were doing like 10 or 11 alt raids a week, something like insane like figure like that. It was out of control. Um, but I knew I wanted to be a part of it, so I acquired more paladins, and I think during Lich King I was up to 4 alt paladins at that point, and then in Cataclysm I have since leveled 4 more. Right now I have 8 max level paladins and 2 more at level 80.
So you just kept going with paladins. You had no interest
Dude,
in changing
I
them.
was addicted. It was just, I did the same thing. I played the same character for 5 years. Didn't even think about playing anything else. I had no idea. I never even like processed it through my brain. Then I started doing it, and it's just like I felt like I did back when I started playing the game. Like how excited I was to learn it and to get better at it. And then that was another driving force. Like I was so new at it, and I felt like, all right, so I've been playing my rogue for 5 years. I'm a world class rogue, but how am I gonna get that experience necessary to like become a great paladin? Naturally, practice makes perfect. I'm an advocate of that 100%. Like, so I just leveled all these paladins so I could always have a paladin to raid on no matter what we were doing. I could be on a paladin, and I could gain that experience that I was lacking, becoming a new main change, eventually, and I really felt like just having a lot of them would really close in that gap and experience level between my rogue and my paladin.
So, so you had all these paladins and obviously a rogue. Now, when Kata began, you were still playing your rogue as a main, right?
Yes,
Although your paladin was leveled as well the first week, just to
yes,
have
my
that.
that's correct. My rogue and my paladin Tahari was on a different account. That wasn't like my main paladin, but because it was on a different account, that one was leveled, and it was able to help out with some 5 mans and such early on, which was nice. JB was kind of like on his way out at that point,
Hmm.
so I actually came in for the first like 3 or 4 kills in BWD that we did. I remember Tron Council and that worm boss Magma, was that his name?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was in there for those kills, and then Chimaron. It's because Paladins were strong, and JB was kind of like not around. Maloriak, he had like a date or something. I don't know. But yeah, that was the. So I mean that's good. I have 2 accounts right now, and I'll be doing that again. I'll be leveling a Paladin and a Monk, and then a Paladin and a Rogue the first week on all different accounts. Um, just to make sure that whatever the guild needs as far as a healer or a rogue, that I'll be able to facilitate that need.
Right. So tier 11 is actually an interesting tier from my perspective. I wanted to know what your take on it was. Ultimately, if it seemed like almost a changing of the guard, where uh, things were getting increasingly more difficult for me to put in the time the guild needed me to put. At the same time, Rig was there, which basically was the voice to continue progress while I wasn't there, which helped out a lot because that wasn't very present or predominant before. Then you had, like you said, grunts and stuff leaving, and we started slowly bringing in people, and also there was a little bit of an interesting attitude perspective because this was the first tier I believe uh, after like after we basically signed on to start doing the film, and
Yeah.
so now all of a sudden it sort of polarized the guild where everybody who wanted to be first said it, stood up, said it proudly, and everyone who sort of it wasn't a priority made it known like, oh, I'm gonna go watch Tron on Friday night rather than try and get this U.S. first, or whatever. I gotta go to my grandma's, or whatever. And I'm definitely guilty of that. Certain things like that. What was your perspective of and feel of that entire tier? How did that
Dude,
go about from you?
that was like a massive disappointment. The whole tier, I felt like we weren't putting in enough time. Um, and I felt like we could have pushed harder. And then on top of that, like some of these people, five, six, seven people who were interviewed for the documentary and talked about how they wanted to be the best and how they were willing to do whatever it takes to establish themselves as the best in the world. And then people, like you said, going in fucking movie during progression and were like this close to killing Conclave of Wind. It was just, I mean, you can't even put words to describe how upset I was with what was happening with the guild at that point in time. JB and Zoomkins, like, where's the dedication? We're here during progression. Like, progression's maybe 2 months, like, out of it, like, maybe like 3-4 months a year at the most. I mean, come on, this is go time. You just did this documentary of these guys coming to your house in Connecticut, and they followed us all around at BlizzCon, and now you're just gonna shit the bed. It felt really stupid because, we're all talking ourselves up during this documentary and talking about how we're gonna, do everything we can to race to world first, and we just kind of shooting ourselves in the feet by, I want to race to go to world first, but no, I really want to see Tron first. Tron's really important to me to see.
Yeah, so it definitely did that, and then and I mean we still did okay at the end. What was but overall disappointed for you? That's how you'd stamp it.
I mean, it didn't live up to what we all had envisioned. It wasn't bad, but guilds that are definitely beneath us in skill level did end up passing us. Guilds like Vodka, who we knew we were better than, I mean, we always have been better than them. They did pass us just because we dropped the ball on a lot of fights like Conclave of Wind, where we just didn't perform, didn't have people dedicated. Like one of our 2 main Holy Paladins missed, 50% of our first kills during Tier 12. Or Tier 11, rather.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, people, I mean, and you were had just started, you're on the way out type of thing. I remember you would work, then you would come back, and you would hop in the raid. I remember we were working on Ascendant Council, and we were wiping for a while, then you came in, and Rig was still new, so like he hadn't really started speaking up, but he was still a trial even, I think. Anyway, he hadn't really started exerting his leadership. I just felt like when you got there, we had more of a leader presence,
Mm-hmm.
because Rig was still new and didn't really feel comfortable stepping up in that regard. And it was nice to have you there, but then there was the curve with getting you filled in with what we were doing with the fights, and having a part-time raid leader and a part-time Holy Paladin, and people who rather be movie enthusiasts than to push progression content isn't really great for the guild.
Oh my god.
I mean, there's a number of other things that happen in that tier. I mean, just chaos. Like, I mean, everything that happened with Atramedes, like, obviously.
Yeah. Well, here's a question.
If you look at our ranking, if you go to tier 11, look at our rankings. Look what happened with Atramedes. Like, if it weren't for Atramedes, we probably would have been, if not one, top 2 for sure in the U.S. If not for that one boss, one broken ass boss that I have video of it still to this day. It's sitting in the floor, it's stuck in the floor, bugged out like all the other guilds did it. And Eric says, we're not killing it like this. We're not killing it like this. We aren't doing that. That's not who we are. And then we killed it maybe a week and a half, 2 weeks later. So, that's all.
Do you wish we did it that way? Did
Yeah,
you
I
even
do.
know at the time did everyone else do it that way? I don't even know. I thought everyone else did it the way we actually
Right.
killed it.
There were numerous ways to kill it. All of them were not intended. All of them were exploiting some type of oversight in the designing of the fight.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, if it's broken anyway, it's being killed in a not intended way. Might as well just kill it as soon as you get the opportunity to, instead of coming back the next week and killing it. It killed you. And in a tier of progression where it's not linear, one boss tying you up like that, like Conclave of Wind, like that, like Atramedes, it just kills you. There's no recovering from that.
Yeah. Well, I could tell you this. That wasn't solely my decision. I was just the one that pulled the trigger. I can tell
Hmm.
you that for a fact. There was actually numerous people who, I mean, that was an issue altogether. That was, I think, the first time in a long time where I felt like I had lost my pulse on the guild, and that's where I started really questioning what was going on, or if I was able to, you know, give everyone what they want when everyone was so polarized. One thing I want to know what the comment on before we move on. Uh, you had mentioned, doing better than other guilds or whatnot. The one thing I think I remember Regen mentioning was that pound for pound, as far as time put in on bosses, Blood Legion is better than everybody. And the only thing that would stop us from doing well is if we would just put in more hours. Because like we wouldn't raid on Friday or Saturday. What is your opinion of that view, where we're losing to poop sockers rather than losing the skill back
I
then
mean,
when we didn't raid as much?
yeah, I definitely felt, and that's when you really look at tier 11, that's what you see. You see a guild that actually almost doubled us in time inside the instances, and I mean, they still won. Who cares? They won. They won the race, and we can sit back and say, oh, they put in more time than us, like as much as we won. And it's a fact in tier 11. That is a fact. That one guild who's number one in that tier put in almost double what we put in on that tier, on it inside the raid type of measurement.
Mm-hmm.
And it fine, whatever. Who cares? They still won. Like they are number one. We're number 3 or 4, whatever we finished up as. I mean, it's just who cares? I don't care. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to be number one. If we have more skill, that's great. Let's put in the time that it takes to kill the fights instead of just sitting back and bullshitting about how they put in more time than us. I don't know. I mean, it sucks just sitting back and watching another guild go in there. I remember one of the guilds, Primo. I remember I had made an alt in their server and I was watching them raid to 6 a.m. one night. 6 a.m. And we had called our raid, shortly after midnight that day. It was just frustrating, like watching that happen.
So
But
yeah,
then you look at it, and I mean that guild that I just named, they fell apart. They're completely in shambles now. Not even just about a year and a half later. So maybe that pushing of that hard, maybe that was the direct result of them getting burned out. And
wasn't a big reason for that. Their guild leader or raid leader got a job and he couldn't commit the hours.
yeah, I mean I'm not really familiar with that, so I'm not going to speculate on what that situation is. But the guild is nothing now. They were always a perennial top 3, if not number 1, U.S. guild for several years. Definitely ICC Ulduar period of time they were. And then they weren't. I mean, after tier 11, tier 12, and tier 13, they just died out.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with Primo has always been my biggest fear. If we push too hard and lose too many people, or if I can't be there, I just wouldn't want the guild to go away because of that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But in any event, so yeah, tier 11 was like we discussed, interesting time. It really people really polarized their opinions. Then a lot of people left due to either bans over archaeology botting, or they were just done. Then we could bring in more people, and at that time we had that giant meeting. There was actually a group of you guys that wanted to really initiate some change, which I truly respected, which ultimately led to promoting, definitely getting Rig up there and becoming an officer to help raid lead. Uh,
Right.
so going in with that, walking out of that discussion, how did you feel about where the guild was going, and then discuss that into Firelands PTR and whatnot.
Yeah, I mean, going into Firelands, it seemed like I felt confident. I felt like we were higher than we ever had been. We were more prepared than we ever had, and we had a more focused, um, agreed goal in what we were going to put into the tier and how hard we were going to push. Rig had become the more vocal leader at that point in time. However, you were still around. Sabina was still around. So there were polarizing forces with how to run things still, and um, specifically with strategy and stuff like that regarding Balrog and Domo. It really sucked not having Rig for Domo on PTR. He was actually applying for a job in California at that point in time, and we didn't have him, and then he was kind of catching up and learning the mechanics of the fight and how we dealt with it on PTR during the progression. That kind of sucked, and Rig, I know he looks back at that and kind of regrets like what went down then, but he had a job opportunity, he didn't want to like waste it. But I mean, I think the frustrating thing in Firelands was you were still like in and out, you were half here, half not here. You were working and trying to get new jobs lined up or whatever, I don't know, but it felt like you were completely part-time. It felt like a lot of the older members like were, it was cliquey. I felt like Firelands was cliquey as far as there was this like new faction of like Rignaros, Juvie, and them that had just come in, and then like the veteran raiders kind of I don't know, were like on different spectrums of how we got along, and it felt cliquey. It felt like there was all these cliques all over the place, and I don't really think we worked well as a team. And then it turned out that our during Firelands our healing roster was very, very weak. We only had one paladin, one holy paladin. We had 2 trials that both turned out to not be any worth a darn at all. Which during Firelands, not having a paladin that was, I mean, paladin was really good, but so were resto druids. We had resto druids, but on a fight like Balrog, where you need massive single target tank healing early on, especially before the healer buffs get big on the priests, you really need paladins to carry the early on healing on tanks, and it just wasn't happening. Balrog, we dropped the ball. Domo was a strategy. That's all it was strategy. We had a terrible strategy. We really didn't have a fundamental understanding of the fight and how best to react to keeping concentration versus not keeping concentration.
Right.
We were taking, I don't know, 7, 8 scythes every Scorpion phase and dropping.
Did we take like 17 at one point?
It was insane.
We're like, we gotta stay at Scorpion the whole time.
That's how we killed it the first time. We killed it with that strategy, with maximizing Scorpion time and minimizing cat time. And it just, I mean, that's if we just completely went wrong with that strategy, and I think not having like our raid leader there for PTR on that fight was a huge reason for that. But then, we still got to rag pretty close to the other guilds. We still had a chance to do it, to finish high, really high, and we couldn't get over phase 2. Phase 2 was just like blew our minds, and we couldn't really figure out what we wanted to do with killing the ads that spawn from the seeds. And I was on my road to start it off, and then we decided that Boomkin would be better, and that was why I started playing a Paladin. After the first maybe 10 or 20% of total pulls that we did in that fight, I did switch to Holy Paladin and played that for the rest of the time, so the bot could get on his alt Moonkin. And then I was 3 healing it with me, Sabina, and Affinity. And I mean, that was fun. That was some of the most fun I've ever had playing the game, because I was being pushed to new levels of I just felt like I had been like the level of play that was required for me, a 3 heal progression. Heroic Ragnaros was just the drive, the intensity of it was just insane, and I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I mean, Firelands, yeah, definitely. That's when I guess I officially bit it, basically. And I was constantly concerned to make, like, hoping everything would go okay. It sounds like things were a little tough, but you guys did really well. I remember coming home from work, you guys already had 4 kills, or 4, it was insane.
Yeah.
I thought the tier was going to be over in a week, but then Rag decided that it's going to take a lot longer than you thought.
Yeah.
What was your overall impression of Rag? Like, how would you rank it in all the fights you've done?
Dude, I think actually a lot of people feel this, but I loved it. I thought it was a great fight. 4 phases, it felt epic. There was intermission phases, and each of the 4 phases had something new to worry about and to deal with, and it just felt great. And then, last phase he gets up, stands up, starts walking around. You have the Breath of Frost you have to deal with, and the Dreadfire, and and Powering and Sulphurous, and like it felt epic. It felt amazing. We were 3 healing it, so it was just chaos, nonstop. Just like after every pull, you're like sweating, is like going hardcore. I loved it. It was just, I've never been pushed that hard on a single fight. 3 healing heroic progression, the end boss. Like I don't really think that's intended, but that's what we had to do, and that's what we did. And you know, it was a blast. I had so much fun. Easily my most favorite fight I've ever done in the game, just because of how hard that I had to push individually. The level of play that I had to bring to the table was, you know, nothing I had experienced before playing a rogue. I mean, that's one of the things one of the reasons I want to switch to healer. Why be? I mean, on heroic Ragnaros, we have 20 DPS, 3 healers. You have much more responsibility being one of those 3 healers than you do one of the 20 DPS. And
Yeah.
you know, main changing, going in the Dragon Soul, like that was the main thing. Like I wanted to have more responsibility. I wanted to be able to positively impact the raid on a bigger spectrum. I felt as a rogue, you know, I can do what I'm doing. I was quarterbacking melee on Balrog, and I was steering on Rylith and coordinating interrupts and flying for Alley Razor, and I was doing everything I could, but I felt like I was still having very little impact on the success of the guild. And being of the elite healing team, that you know, during progression, I feel like you directly have more impact on the success or the lack of success, depending on which way it goes.
So this is where you basically change your main from
Yeah,
rogue
I mean,
to paladin.
seeing the 3 healing of heroic Ragnaros and having so much fun with that, and knowing that if I hadn't been playing at the top of my game, that we wouldn't have killed it when we did. That's just when I decided that I wanted to switch, and we had good rogues. We have great rogues, and it just felt like we had 2 good ones. We seemed to find another one, which we did eventually. Rogues are easy to find. Great healers aren't. We've had, I mean, even since then, we had those 2 trials that during Firelands that didn't work out very well, and then we had more trials and more trials. We just had a lot of trials that did not work out. I mean, it's hard to find a healer that's gonna really mesh well with your team.
Right.
So I don't know. I mean, I decided right there and then during Ragnaros that I wanted to main switch.
Very nice. Well, one thing I wonder is how did you maintain? How were you able to focus every pull and play at the best you could? Like you said, the healing role is so important, especially in a situation where there's only 3 of you. What's your secret? Do you even have a secret? As far as constantly being focused for hours and hours of attempts.
Yeah, I think that the thing that I do more than most people is I really focus on my job more specifically, and what I can be doing, what the healing team in general can be doing to improve every fight, finding ways to, like, always be looking during the fight, looking for ways that I can better handle cooldowns and when to heal this, when to heal that. Especially healing, like healing is so, it's like people say it's an art or whatever. DPS is, you know, whatever they say about like healing is an art, DPS is a skill, and blah blah blah. It just being able to like constantly improve every attempt with what you're doing at every particular second of the fight, and really focus on your own job, your own role as the healer, and not get burned out focusing on what everybody else is doing. If you focus on what everybody else is doing during progression like relentlessly, you're gonna get like stressed out, demoralized. You need to focus on what you're doing. If you're doing it well, then you feel like every attempt could be a success. Every attempt, as soon as they figure out what they're doing, which you're not focused on entirely, as soon as they get that down, then you're gonna be ready to kill it because you've been focusing on your job. Your job is handled. You know what you're doing. Everything that you've been doing is min-maxed completely, and you're ready to kill it when they are. So I think that's the big thing, is like not get demoralized by like what's happening in the raid, but just constantly be focusing on your own job and just every little thing that you can do to improve that, and you know, play the mana game. Like every fight for a healer, you're playing the mana game. There's a game within a game within a game as a healer, and it's fantastic. And I really think focusing on that and my own role and responsibility is how I get through it. Every fight, just trying to like every fight I'm playing my own boss by myself, with how trying to beat myself, beat my prior performances. Hey, I'm at 90% mana here. Before I was at 70%, and just constantly improving so that the guild, like as we get further progressed and DPS figures out what they're doing and tanks figure out what they're doing, we're all ready to kill it.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely that makes sense for me. Knowing you, every game within a game. That's a good one.
Yeah.
Wowception. Some guy in chat says. So yeah, Firelands turned out pretty well. I was proud of it because it was it let me know I can sort of figure my stuff out on a personal level. You guys actually got a raid leader who's able to put in the hours and sort of be the example of what everyone should be sort of striving to work towards, which is something I failed at. And going from Firelands, a lot of things changed where essentially not only was I gone, but then also Sabina had quit, and there was just sort of Rig and Zonker really. I don't
Right,
know. He's not gonna
he,
cause problems for Rig, really.
right, yeah. That's what, and you're right. I mean, as soon as Sabina left and you were officially done, Rig had basically free reign to do
Right.
whatever he wanted to do, and Zonker, he's an officer. He's been around forever, and everyone respects him highly. But he's not like the vocal leader.
Yeah.
So Rignos basically had 100% of the leadership responsibility, and he didn't have a job, but like he was trying to get like during progression, like you, and he didn't have like drama with his like personal life going on during progression like somebody else. So I mean, he just like his focus level, and he's 100% at all responsibility, and he was able to do whatever he wanted with the guild, like whatever his vision was, whatever he wanted to do, like he was able to do it without anyone like saying, "Oh, I think we should do it this way." Like it was his way or get the fuck out. And having like a focused officer vision, and then Ataxis was promoted as well, so
Right. Yeah.
he's definitely very hardcore. So just having that like focused mindset for the tier of tier 13 coming up was actually really good. And I actually feel like my preparation going to tier 13 was the worst that it's ever been, because I had all my stuff happening with my new job, and I had actually moved to Oklahoma City, to Waco, back to Sioux City, Iowa. So I moved 3 times, or 1, 2, like 4 times. I don't know how many times
Right.
that is. During the PTR, I had actually missed. I missed almost every fight. I was there for a little bit of Ultraxi and there for a little bit of Morchok. Didn't see any Spine, didn't see any Madness. Did see a little bit of Yorsage. And I watched the videos that I could. They had frapsed them and streamed them privately. So I did everything I could, but going into it, I felt like I was kind of. I'd actually said that I was going to quit because I didn't think that there was any way that I could raid what I wanted to raid and raid what the guild needed me to raid and work full time. But then when I got to Iowa, I figured out that, hey, my schedule's going to be perfect. I have like Wednesdays, Thursdays off. I have all this vacation time saved from when I was at the academy. I had said that I was quitting because I didn't think there was any possibility at all that I could keep raiding and working full time.
Mm-hmm.
And because I knew the schedule would be kind of weird with raiding, but it just worked out. I was able to get Wednesdays and Thursdays off, so I don't work. That was my Saturday and Sunday. And then it's just I could basically get any vacation time I needed. I'm not needed for staffing right now. I'm still training, so I don't affect our staffing numbers. So it works out great for at least another 2 years or so. And I didn't see that happening. So I basically came out of retirement shortly before Cataclysm came out, or not before Deathwing came out, Dragon Soul.
Yeah, I remember during that time you would talk to me. You're like, "Is this what it's like? Is trying to have a real life?" And I remember telling you, I'm like, "Man, like if you want to do it, you'll be able to do it. Like they'll use you when they need you. But knowing you, I mean, you're either all in or F it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
Yeah.
what you told everyone else, and why hold yourself to a different standard? And I
Yep.
definitely respected you for that. But yeah, things worked out, and you got to do Dragon Soul. Dragon Soul, what I thought was cool was seeing what Rick sort of did with ideas that we had. Like, for example, we did all the alt stuff in Ice Crown with the spreadsheets. And again, that was just sort of a thing where I said, hey, everybody, we have these chests and stuff from the legendaries. Let's figure out a way everyone can get them rather than having to pick and choose people. And it was
Right.
sort of an all optional thing. I obviously wasn't around for this time period because after the BlizzCon raid, I was sort of completely delved into my work. Tell us about Dragon Soul, the whole birth of alts, how the spreadsheets grew into what they are today.
Well, I think the birth of the alts was during ICC with everything that you were talking about before.
Right, but it sort of became like everyone now has to have alts. Is that
Yeah.
when did that exactly happen?
I would say during farming of staffs was when we really started mandating it and having mandated alt raids, and you were required to have at least 2 alts or whatnot. Within Dragon Soul, I mean, the first week of Dragon Soul, all you can do is normals. We did 6 normal clears of Dragon Soul the first week that it was out,
Right.
with a little bit of mains in each raid to maximize the gear. Every piece of gear that dropped basically went to a main. So if you we had like 1 person per token in each raid, and we spread it out as much as we could, and we went into heroic Dragon Soul, the best geared guild in the world. So we put ourselves in a position from just planning and loving alts and playing alts and really having an alt raid friendly environment. We were able to be in a position where we were significantly higher geared than any other guild who was going in there with us. I mean, and you say, oh, people were banned or whatever, but that's bullshit, because the guild that we wanted to beat more than anybody, the guild that we hate more than anybody, or I hate most of them. I mean, Adam's great.
Oh
I love
my
Adam.
god.
Dude, Adam the Holy Fellow, he's like a great guy. But all the other guys, they can like, whatever. Don't like them. I'm not gonna say their name,
Okay.
but dude, like, I mean, the guild we wanted to beat more than anybody. Like, that's the guild we want to beat more than anybody. Like, every tier, that's what we want to just like grind into the ground, just like eat our dust, motherfucker. You know, like that type of thing, right?
Sure. Okay.
But we beat them, and they didn't get banned. They had no bans, like nothing happening there. So I mean, we performed, and the planning, the spreadsheets, the execution of having it all like planned out. You're coming to this raid. You're coming to this raid. You're coming to this raid. None of the loot's getting wasted. Let's talk about it. Let's all put our heads together. How can we maximize everything that we're doing? 6 raids. Week 1 Dragon Soul. 6 full clears all the way through Madness. 8 of 8 normal. It's just that's what enabled us to win, and that's what's going to going forward, and that's our biggest strength is the alts that can come in and carry mains to getting better gear, and it's just that type of dedication, and it's many more hours that you put in the game just preparing for the progression. It's
Right.
not just putting all your time into progression and the PTR setting. It's like front loading all of your time. Yeah, it's front loading all of your time, so that you can. It just makes it easier during progression. I mean, and so, like, even not during progression, we're still doing things that constantly. We're always thinking about what can we be doing to better prepare for progression, and I mean that's something that we just started doing more of. Not taking time off during farm, but really pushing harder during farm to be better prepared for progression.
Yeah, and you guys definitely. What was nice at this point is every person you recruit, especially nowadays that I've noticed, every person you recruit, you tell them straight up, if you can't commit to these times, no matter how good you are, we can't use you, or the sense that if you don't play alts, we can't use you. That's something that was not something we enforced before, and something we started enforcing now. Do you feel? What is your perspective of that? Of the being in the position you're in now, where you're able to recruit how you want to recruit rather than recruit whatever is given to you.
Yeah, I mean that's huge. Without recruitment, you're not going to be able to ever get better. You're basically going to be stuck in perpetual state of being mediocre. But we've gotten huge recruits, and that never would have been possible without getting to where we are right now. And I mean, every day, dozens and dozens of applications every day, and we're always looking for more. We're always looking for exceptional players to fill in our ranks. And I feel like we don't have to compete in recruitment as much. Like people say that in sports, like the big colleges, don't have to do recruiting at all. People come to them, and they don't really have to do much work regarding it. Like people come to them, they say yes, we want you, they're in, and that's kind of how it feels now. Like we don't have to work as hard to get quality players in here because they naturally want to be here. They put in their applications. We don't have to go looking for them.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot easier, and you really get a quality roster when you're ranked number 1 in your region. And that without that, I mean, it makes everything much more difficult. It's not impossible to do it without them because we got here, we got to this point. We were probably 3rd or 4th for a number of tiers in a row, and now we're number 1, and we got there from just pushing hard and working as a team.
Yeah, definitely. Quickly, we almost got raid coming up.
Yep.
Give us just quick overall thoughts on Dragon Soul. how you felt. Maybe a little bit. Maybe spine is probably the best place to talk about. Obviously, you pushed. You guys got world first everything except War Master, and you were real close on that. And then you started doing spine, and
Mhm.
no matter what anybody says, I mean, I was watching it. That's for sure. Uh, the like all the top guilds were on spine at the same time, and they're all working on it at the same time. What was spine like for you guys?
I mean, Spine was like we're the only fight of the tier where you really have to fight the whole it's impossible to kill in its current state type of thing. You put in the most attempts into Spine by far. You put more attempts into Spine than any other boss the entire expansion, the entire Dragon Soul experience. So that's where you're really like people are starting to get demoralized with how we're wiping over and over and over again, and figuring out what we wanted to do with the plate popping and how we wanted to push with rogues and mages. It was kind of difficult. We didn't really have of all of the alts that we had of everything we had. What we actually struggled in more than anything was mages. We really did not have many exceptional mage alts, and that was really frustrating. Just people dropped the ball on that. Some of the less dedicated alt players who had mage alts just dropped the ball completely, and that was frustrating. And I felt really upset about that. And there's people who, I mean, on Illidan, people didn't have epic gems on Spine, and where there's like 2 bosses from being at the end, and people still don't have epic gems. It sucked, dude. I mean, I was really mad and frustrated, and we just kept pushing though. We kept going in there every night, and getting better and improving, and and just finally we were able to get it down just by staying, working together and not getting down and not quitting like we did back in Yogg Zero's times. Like, I mean, quitting, like, we made a conscious decision as a guild to quit on that fight. And, I mean, you can't ever do that. But, I mean, just not quitting and always wanting to push harder and harder and going every night and putting in the time. That was how we were able to get past that finally. Then we spent 2-3 nights raiding on Madness, and it was dead. And it was over, and, like, the finish line was there. We were number 1. It felt good.
Now, while doing spine, did you ever get flashbacks of Yogg Zero back in Ascent, where that fight basically, like you said, destroyed your guild or disbanded it? Did you ever, did that fear ever cross your mind, or maybe not even just maybe you're not your mind, but was that ever a concern anybody ever made apparent? Like, I can't do this anymore. I'm done, or whatever. Was that feeling ever present?
I don't remember. I don't think there was. Maybe 1 or 2 people, because not because they were in the fight and they thought that it was impossible, but because they wanted to be in the fight and they weren't.
Mm.
And this was completely, people wanted to be in. And the fight was very hard. We put tons and tons and tons of attempts into it, but the frustration came from people who weren't in, who wanted to be in. They just weren't around. They just weren't in the raid every night, night after night, because we didn't want that class, and they kind of just quit or just kind of faded out. And there's only maybe 1 or 2 people at the most that were in that situation, but it just, with Spine, it's kind of really frustrating that the whole bring the class, not the player thing. Like, we had to bring in alt mages and alt rogues and not have names in there. We wanted to bring the player and not the class, but like again and again and again, I mean, it's impossible to have that perfect, bring the player, not the class, because of mechanics. Mechanics are always going to favor one class more than another in one way or another.
Right.
But, I mean, that was the biggest frustrating thing, because you're sitting there, and like, man, if we just had a couple more mages, this would be like, instantly, we would kill this. And that's what happened. We got more mages, and we recruited logos, and we were able to kill it. And it's just really frustrating that, we're so far ahead in all the other guilds. We blazed through the first 6 bosses, and then we get to this fight where our roster and our not having infinite number of staffs, like a certain guild who had double lockouts in Firelands, and were able to farm twice as many staffs as us. They had that, we didn't, and staffs were huge. Like, staffs were pivotal on that fight.
Right. So, ultimately, you guys learned your lesson with the alts, I would say. It sort of made it, I feel like you sort of grew more on that, like on that policy. Like, yeah, there was mandated alt runs, but now it's like, well, the alts need to be good enough to plug them into actual raiding environments and
Hmm.
situations. Because as you saw with Spine, it was too important. Uh, People think these rating contents is constantly the same stuff over and over again. But when you look at fights like Rag, you look at Spine, or even some of the other fights like Yorsage and whatnot, there's still a lot of fresh ideas that people haven't thought of. That Blizzard still has tricks up their sleeves, basically.
Hmm.
Um, so to wrap up, what we're going with, what is like your thoughts going into Miss, and what do you hope to not only accomplish personally, but as the guild, and what you want from Blizzard in that expansion?
I mean, obviously, you can always say that you want a rating tier where there wasn't a fight that wasn't bugged or broken or completely required class stacking to defeat early on. I mean, that's obviously as a raider who competes, you want it to be in a manner that allows you to demonstrate that your players that you want to bring, not the classes that you want to bring, but your players that you want to bring are the best. And having fights that are bugged and broken, like many fights have been in the past, which has tainted the race completely, um, or fights that required massive class stacking to kill on early on with maybe 20 druids or 8 mages or 8 rogues. You
Mm-hmm.
know, fights like that, that's just not fun. No one wants to see that in a competitive environment, having certain aspects like that taint the race. So going forward, I mean, that's obviously what you always want to hope for. You want to hope that monks aren't like incredibly overpowered, which they might be. We'll see. You want to hope that class balance is pretty even, so that your players and not the classes are the ones rating.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I mean, that's what you always want to hope for. It's really difficult with a new expansion and a brand new hero class, but or whatever they are, you know, that's what we're hoping for. We're hoping to be able to demonstrate that we're the best with our players, and not we can't raid stack the best, or we can't break the fight or cheat the game the best, um, which has been present in all of the past expansions, which is and tiers and all the races. It's just it taints it, and it puts a bad taste in your mouth with everything that happens,
Mm-hmm.
and you just don't want to see that.
And you still plan on playing your paladin?
Yes.
You don't want to mess with the monk and get obsessed with that, maybe?
N- n- I do plan on having a monk as an alt,
Oh,
which
okay.
is actually, yeah,
That's a
it's
the
big news.
surprise.
It's
It's gonna
gonna
be
be
big
it's
news,
gonna be my
guys.
first non-holy paladin alt. Um, but I mean, we'll see how that goes. We'll see. Nothing set in stone yet. I might just level like 6 holy paladins again and then just do that. We'll see.
Nice.
Yep.
Well, I want to thank you for your time, Nodozz.
Yep.
Thanks everyone for watching. Uh, Maybe we could take a couple questions if everyone has, but we got a raid coming up now. If you guys got a couple questions, we can check that out. So I guess they gotta get that to them. Real quick, are you happy or sad that I'm back raiding?
Mixed emotions.
Mixed emotions.
We have a couple very good warriors in the guild right now, so I don't really see like how it fits in. But you're obviously a legacy member of Blood Legion, and you're definitely, without your efforts, we wouldn't be where we are today. It's just like most people who were in the guild forever and had an integral part in leadership. So it's kind of nice to have someone being able to, like, who was back, back in the days when Blood Legion was becoming the guild that it is today, like being able to experience what we've become. That's kind of nice. But yeah, I mean, as far as our roster goes, like, we obviously have 2 member warriors who are very, very good, and
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't really know if 3 warriors in a raid is viable, and I just don't see how it fits, but it doesn't hurt, so whatever. I mean, you were a little bit rusty coming back initially, but
Yeah, that's true. I think it was tough for me to learn fights while you guys were farming them on alts
yeah,
and streaming it for like thousands of people. So
yeah,
all that was interesting. But yeah, like I don't want to cause waves, and I told everyone Rig's gonna do what he does. I'm not gonna come take over. That was not my intention. I just wanted to play again. So we'll see where I fit in. Maybe
yeah.
I'll
I mean,
maybe
and
I'll
you
play a
gotta
paladin and heal with you. No.
no, that's not allowed. See, See, that's not allowed. If you have the Blood Legion, you're not allowed to have Holy Paladin alts.
You're not allowed to have holy. Is that really? You can't have holy paladin alts?
No, dude,
You got.
I
You got
smoke
dibs.
them all out. Yeah, dude, I smoke them all out.
There. You are not allowed to. I didn't know. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I should have realized that. I guess I haven't even
Yeah.
seen any holy paladin alts.
No, there aren't any.
It's just.
I just make them feel bad and pressure them to leave.
It's just you. Oh man.
Anyway.
Is there a quick question? Let's do a quick question. What's the most important add-on? Let's do that. What's your clutch add-on that really gets to you? Sorry, we can't get to all your questions, guys. We got a raid starting in a couple minutes here.
I mean, I would say just grid. Grid is everything for a healer. Or grid or whatever raid frame you're using, not in default. Grid is huge. Like I do everything with the grid. I customize my grid to show everything that I needed to show. It's huge. And then another one that I actually just started using recently, Extra CD. It shows all of your Holy Paladin stuff. Blessed Life or whatever. It shows your Mace procs, shows your Trinket procs, shows everything on all their ICDs, which is nice. So yeah, Grid, Extra CD. I use Clique, CLIQUE. That's a great add-on. I use it for all of my hands, land hands, Hand of Prot, Freedom, Hand of Sack, South, all of those. Yep. And then yeah, Dominoes, Recount.
Yeah, all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
And the last question, let's address. People want to know: will you be streaming more frequently? They miss your streams.
I know I haven't really been streaming as much as I used to because I do work full time, and to balance working full time with what I need to do in game and my free time, it's more difficult. I used to stream all the time back before I started working at my current job. I will try and do what I can to be here and there and to participate in stream chats and whatnot, but I can't say that I personally will be streaming more often. Maybe here and there, every once in a while. Like I was 6-boxing healers the other day in LFR. That was kind of fun.
Wow.
But yeah. But I don't know that I'll be. Yeah, I'm just gonna be here and there, but I'm not really focused on mainly streaming anymore. I'm gonna be doing a lot of fraps, that's for sure.
Yeah, we'll. You and Dexter, I believe, started the whole streaming bit anyway.
Yep.
I remember
was...
we were against it back in the day, and now sort of the guilds embraced it, and even I've embraced it. So we'll definitely. That's a subject we could go into for a long time. But we'll definitely have to do this again. Time restraint. I want to thank you for the time. Thank you for doing this with me.
Yeah, no
hope
problem.
you guys enjoyed watching. Sorry for the late start. This will be on YouTube for those of you who want to see the entire thing. We'll definitely have to do this again. There's so much we could talk to Nodozz about, so I'm pretty excited about that. So, thanks again, Nodozz. Thanks everybody for watching.
Bye, guys.
So, outro with my intro, and we'll see you guys later.
Got it. Did we rest? Stop interrupt.
Don't forget Friday, interview with Right Toast. See you then.